Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first NATS chat of 2020. And I am so honored to have Santino Fontana join us this evening. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure. And I'm so sorry I wasn't here last week.
That's all right. You had quite the stressful day.
I did. LA traffic is a nightmare.
Well, we're so grateful you joined us again. And before we start, kind of on a personal note, it's so fun for me to share that Santino and I are from the same hometown and went to the same high school. I was shocked to find that out. Of course, nearly 20 years apart, but we are both proud Richland Bombers. And so I love that particular connection. Obviously, there's a lot of information people can find online, so I'm just going to give a couple highlights. So Santino was the Tony Award winner last June for playing Michael Dorsey slash Dorothy Michaels in the Broadway Tootsie, which just closed 2 weeks ago, correct?
Not even, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Week and a half. Yeah.
a week and a half ago. So he's still catching his breath from that. He also was the voice of Prince Hans in the 2013 Disney animated film Frozen, and was on the TV show. He is one of the leads in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a charming, charming, unique show, and originated the role of Prince Topher in the 2013 revival of Cinderella. So those are just a few of the remarkable highlights of your young career still. So let us begin with a little bit about Beyond the Bio, just telling us how you came to arrive at where you are now.
Sure. I was born in the Central Valley of California, Stockton, California, which is a very uh, not a really great place to have been born. Uh, but while I was there, it was kind of a dangerous place. I would say that it's a dangerous city. My grandfather, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. He babysat me a lot, and the his method of babysitting, because I think he didn't know what to do, was to go to Blockbuster. For those of you who remember what Blockbuster is, and he would rent the movies that he was obsessed with, that he loved, and it was a wide, diverse range of movies. So Bridge Over River Kwai and 12 Angry Men and Abbott and Costello movies, and then also, of course, musicals and the old, Singing in the Rain, which I have memorized, as well as An American in Paris and, Wizard of Oz, all of those, A Star is Born, all of those movies that he grew up kind of watching as a young adult. And then what he would do is he would just rewind them and I would watch them again. And so I became kind of obsessed with the power of story and the power of uniting a group of strangers, or a bunch of strangers meeting another group of strangers, the performers and the audience, and being captivated by that and being able to either escape from it but also learn about ourselves and each other and be entertained in the process. So that was kind of my childhood. That's what I remember, and then it really being something that I was constantly drawn to and would repeat, just over and over and over again.
That's amazing that the family introducing you to that, especially your grandfather. And what were your early years of training like? Were you at 6 years old in dance class? Were you?
I mean, I was one of those kids that I think at a certain point I did ask my grandfather, I asked my parents, like, so when am I gonna do, what in the movies that I was watching, like, when am I gonna do that? When am I gonna tap dance? Which I did start when I was, I think, 7 or 8, which I think my parents must have thought I was insane. I was also playing baseball at the time, like the
I was
league and
just
stuff.
gonna ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was, and I now I can really kind of fully comprehend how strange that must have been. And I wanted to play the piano. I knew that my sister played, but I was obsessed with that. And I played the trumpet in elementary school and then middle school, and then I focused on piano in high school. But I didn't really sing until I would do plays like casually with, force my friends to do plays in the garage, that whole thing. And and in high school, I sang in musicals in the high school. Uh, and then it wasn't until there was a summer that I went to Interlochen Arts Camp where they force everybody to have a voice teacher and was doing Italian art songs, Gial Sole and all that stuff. And then,
Okay.
yes, I know it well. And then Se ben crudele, all that stuff. And
Of
uh,
course.
and I loved it, and it was kind of like, this is so different. And for me, I'd never heard that, I'd never seen it. And the teacher that I had at Interlochen named Lisa Litteral, who was also, I think, Josh Groban's teacher the year before I was there. And she said, "You're going to find a teacher when you go back home, and you're going to sing your senior year of high school." And I found
Right.
Richard Sayre, who lives in Richland, and he was my singing teacher my senior year of high school. And then I still would bug him constantly when I was in college before I met my voice teacher in New York, Joan Lader, who I still study with now.
Who I'm deeply grateful for. Joan is a dear friend of mine, and she is the one that connected us. So thank you, Joan,
Yes,
for
yes.
doing so. So go a couple steps back. I remember reading or hearing in one of the interviews that really baseball was kind of your love as well, and that is what you wanted to do when you grew up. Am I remembering that correctly?
Absolutely. Yeah, as a kid, when they're like, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And, they have you like draw what you're going to be it was always baseball. And I was obsessed with it and loved it. And I played, as a kid all the way through high school. I played. And then at a certain point in high school, it became clear that I was better at this than at baseball. And I had a coach, I think my senior year of high school, my baseball coach kind of was like, it was a rare moment of his, because I never talked about what I did. I would go from baseball practice to rehearsal, and they never mixed. And I think a coach in high school did say something like, he saw like an assembly where I performed. He was like, you're good at this, but you're really good. You're really good at that. That's, it's rare. Like that, but that was his like macho guy version of kind of being like, yeah, that's good. You've got something. Yeah, and that was kind of the end of baseball.
And your parents were probably thinking, couldn't he be good at like math and baseball or math and music?
Yeah,
But you
yeah,
picked two. Yes.
yeah. And to my parents' credit, they and my whole family, there was no one in my family who made a living in the arts. There was no one in my hometown, either hometown from the two places I'm from, that I knew that made their living in the arts, let alone as an actor or a singer. So, I mean, now, I mean, I just had a baby girl. My wife and I just had a child, and the idea. I'm just thinking back to what my parents must have thought of, like, what is going on? Where are we going? But there was never any concern or criticism. There was nothing but I was never told no. I was
Yeah.
only supported in doing whatever I felt like I wanted to be doing. Um,
That is a remarkable gift. I had the same gift from my parents. They always encouraged me. My dad did ask me my freshman year of college to get a business minor. And I called him in the middle of my, semester midterms. I was in micro macro economics and I was just hysterical because I was getting a C. And he said, drop it. It's not, and they never ever pushed that. But now as an academic, I have to tell you, the parents really want their students. I mean, the arts are dying. Arts and humanities are really having a problem because
yeah,
parents want their kids to do something in business or technology or something more secure. It's a concern because I live, as you know, in Seattle, where we have Google and Microsoft and all of this, and it's become so expensive to live that my poor students, when they come out of college, they can't get a basic apartment. And I think, gosh, we really want a society where there's no arts?
yeah.
You, so anyway, I didn't mean to go off on that little rabbit hole, but I
No,
would love your thoughts on that.
I think what um, I think the great. I hear what you're saying. I mean, I thought I was going to be. I ended up going to college at the University of Minnesota in association with the Guthrie Theaters. I was in the first class of their actor training program, which was training doing classical actor training, and I was singing on the side, kind of secretly, with a teacher at the Minnesota Opera, Barbara Keurig, who's also a great teacher. But I thought I was going to be a regional theater actor in a rep company which, surprise, surprise, there aren't more than 3 in America, that really are actual rep companies of actors doing plays. So it became very clear to me, oh God, the world that I had hoped I would be able to go into doesn't exist the way that I had imagined. However, uh, it's changing. And I do think, listen, skill is skill, and being able to connect with a group of people with something that is virtuosic and human and extraordinary and beautiful or challenging or scary, that will never stop being powerful. And the amazing thing, which ties into what you were saying about being in Seattle with Google and Microsoft. I mean, I was just I had a meeting with here in LA with Apple as an actor, like to meet with the casting people about like TV shows that they're now developing. They have 70 television shows in
Wow.
development. I think a handful of them are musicals, which is a separate note. But the way that technology has been able to bring audiences to things that they wouldn't have access to, I don't think we've seen yet how that's going to affect
Long.
everything else. I mean, I did a concert with the Buffalo Philharmonic a long time ago, and we went and saw The Tempest that was at the Met in
Mhm.
the simulcast, right? That was when I was a kid. That wasn't a thing. You couldn't do that. I mean, the ability. I was just had some time off, and my musical director Ted Sperling, who's also brilliant, was like, "Let's go see that Tempest that's at the Met. That's playing at the movie theater down the street." I mean, that's so. I have hope that
Oh, I
you
love
know
that.
yeah, and it's remarkable. I mean, I remember I showed a buddy of mine. Appreciate this. I was showing it like my guy friends from home, from Richland, from Washington State, who I played baseball with, who are never been to the opera. They never, I don't. I showed them Natalie Desai singing "Glitter and Be Gay," and they were like, "Why have I never heard of this? Why have I never seen this?" And I was like, "Well, the amazing thing is now on YouTube, you can." You can
Yeah.
see stuff that you don't get to see, something that is extraordinary like that. Um, you know, uh, anyway, I have hope that this ability to be able to see what you want when you want, as
Mhm.
long as people are continuing to do the things that are astonishing,
Mhm.
they'll find an audience. I have to believe that. I hope, you know.
Well, not to get on another soapbox, but it does when people on those TV shows, The Voice or whatever, and there'll be a classical singer on, or there's a great video of a woman who she starts off with an aria and then, rips her formal skirt off and has this sexy outfit and starts really belting something. And the audience just in the classical part is just in awe and clapping, and they pan in on the audience. And I think, go to a dang opera and see this live. Like, I don't get why it's always so magical to them on those shows, and yet people aren't supporting the arts. There's a
Because
disconnect.
it's so rare. I think it's because it's so rare. Because first of all, there's very few people that can really do it well, and I think the language. I mean, we're getting in the weeds, but I think the language barriers of the tradition
Yeah.
at times put up roadblocks of like, I don't speak Italian, I don't know German, I don't want to, for whatever reason, or there aren't enough opera companies in those. I mean, from where I'm from, there was an opera company. I don't know if it's still
Washington
there.
Opera.
Opera,
What
yes, which I
I've
did.
seen
Oh,
many times.
oh
Yeah.
no, what's happening? Uh, where'd you go? Oh no, can you still see me?
I can see you and hear you, but
Oh, good. I can't see you, but that's fine.
oh
Okay.
no, that'll
No,
be
no, it's
disgusting.
fine. I don't know
Okay,
what happened.
you must have hit a button.
Oh no. As long as you can see me, we're good. Oh,
Okay.
there you are. There you are. The Washington East Opera, which I did La Traviata with them. If I guess.
Uh-huh.
But that was the first. That wasn't when we moved there. That wasn't, And those singers are still. I mean, I remember Brian Stuckey and Lindsay. Oh, what's her last name? Oh God, Lindsay. Anyway, she was in, Philia, Philia. That was incredible. Like it's just amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
I do wish, I agree with you, but I also, they sample classical singers often in pop music all the time. I'm friends with Nico Muhly, the composer, who I saw what was the what's the movie that he adapted that was at the Met recently?
Oh,
Hitchcock movie.
oh,
Barney. He just
oh,
wrote Barney that was at the Met, and he's hired all. I shouldn't be saying this, but he's hired all the time by like pops like Beyonce and to like come in and add like a classical element on top of their tracks.
mhm.
So, and here's the best thing. My wife is also a soprano.
Yes.
It's an
I hear a
amazing.
beautiful singer. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing top. It's incredible. And we also always complain like, where are those parts? Even on Broadway, where are those parts? And
Mhm.
and yet, if I have whenever I do a concert and she's around, I force her to like go sing Ice Cream, where there's that high B at the end of the song that, I did a concert with her at the Houston Symphony where she sang the arrangement, Sandy Patty arrangement of Oh Holy Night. People
Uh-huh.
leap to their feet,
They love it. Yeah.
leap to their feet. So it's not gone. It's just about, and the people in the know. I mean, Kelly O'Hara, Audra McDonald, Kristen Chenoweth, those are the biggest names on Broadway. And those are all classically trained
Yeah.
sopranos.
Absolutely.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's still respected. It's just, I agree with you. I wish more people knew about it because it would floor them.
Yeah. There
Yeah.
was something you said in our pre-chat that we had last week, and that really has stayed with me. And you talked about, well, it kind of leads me to one of my questions about, what do you attribute your success to besides, of course, luck, right? And one
Mhm.
of the things you shared with me was about your obsessiveness with storytelling and I want to just share this. I read this or saw it on one of your interviews, and I hope I'm repeating it correctly, but they originally approached you for the Cinderella, and you at first said no because you said there was not. Am I remembering correctly? That why
Yeah.
don't you share it? We'd rather hear from you.
I thought we know nothing about who the prince is. My memory of the prince in Cinderella is the guy who like shows up and saves her, which is not particularly timely nor interesting nor accurate, but also is I know nothing about him.
Hmm.
I know nothing about the prince other than he's attractive and charming and obviously rich and royal. And when I read the script, which Doug Bean wrote the book of, the adaptation of the more recent version, he filled in all those dots, all of those empty gaps of this is a neurotic guy. He made him human. And suddenly the story of a prince trying to figure out how to be the right kind of prince he wants to be and meeting Cinderella and he being able to help Cinderella, Cinderella being able to help him, suddenly was very interesting to me.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's always for me. It's always about story, and Once Upon a Time is music to my ears. As soon as I hear that, I'm hooked. I want to know um, what's going on and what happens, and I love that the power of that, and that's what I always will go back to, that storytelling component.
That's such a gutsy thing, though. That was what 2013. So that the conversation would have been in 2012. You were still young. I
Yeah.
mean, I just think what a gutsy move to say to somebody who says, "Do you want to come sing a Broadway hit show revival?" And you're going to actually say, I don't know that there's enough meat in that character for me.
But I
I
think
find
it's really because I thought I'm not going to be good at this. If you want a 6'4" model guy who can sing, I'm not that guy. Like this isn't going to go well. You're not gonna be happy. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to fit. That's really what it was out of. Um, that was my real like. I don't think so. And also, that wasn't my. I'd been on Broadway before at that point, so Broadway, and I said this to Joan all the time, it's no joke. It's a grind. I mean, doing something 8 times a week for a year, which you better be prepared to do, that's a commitment. 6 days a week, 8 shows a week. It's a life. If you're an athlete and uh, you know where you're going to be every minute of every day. So you better not only love it, but feel like you can really contribute,
Mhm.
um, because as thrilling as it is, and as much of an honor as it is to. I know I was doing a TV show. This is another good story. I was doing a TV show with right before it with Patrick Wilson, a guest star on a TV show called The Gifted Man. And Patrick Wilson is an amazing singer in his own right. And I told him I have to decide about Cinderella or this other thing, and he was like, "You have to do Cinderella." I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Do you know how few people get to sing those songs on Broadway?" He's like, "You're gonna get to sing 10 minutes ago and Do I Love You Because You're Beautiful, which has never been sung on a Broadway stage. You're gonna be the person. You have to do that. No one else gets. Very few people get to do that." And it helped kind of put everything in perspective. But it also it's a commitment.
Mhm.
So I don't take any of those commitments lightly because it's a lot.
And I definitely want to talk about vocal health. Before we go down that rabbit hole, though, talk to me a little bit more about what you attribute your success to. I know that's kind of an odd question, but work ethic. I mean, is there some magic in your training or in your
No,
work ethic?
no magic. So sad. There's no magic. There's no finish line. There's no magic. No, there are no trumpets, as Stephen Sondheim tells us, and he's right. No one is going to come save you. And it is. I think the people that succeed are the people who don't leave. One, that's a huge part of it. You don't leave. And there, as you said, there is an obsessive tendency, which Joan will attest to in frustration, uh, of my wanting to, and Reg will too, of wanting to figure it out and being determined to figure out how to do things better and in a more undeniable way. And uh, I wanted to do this my life. And I didn't particularly care where or with whom. I tell people all the time, Broadway is a street in New York and it's crooked. Like it's not about that. It's about getting to step into the shoes of a character and tell a story with a group of people with a common goal. And I can do that anywhere in the right situations. And if I'm going to find a way to get paid for it, fantastic.
Mhm.
And I think that is a life in art is something that is pursuable, admirable, and achievable.
Mhm.
Beyond that, it's luck and noise and insanity and frustrating and thrilling. But at the end of the day, that's the meat and potatoes of what I do day in and day out, and what gets me both excited, but also is why I think it's both sustainable for me and exciting because it's in front of I'm in control of it. I guess I would
Mhm.
say.
Mhm. And I want to just remind our attendees, please open up your question box and you can type a question. And I just want to, before we continue, Jeff Costello has typed in that he feels that cuts in funding in music education is at least partly to blame for the general public being uninformed about opera and classical styles, sadly, in context to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. So Santino, what do you think as teachers of young singers, either teenagers, college, emerging professionals, a couple thoughts. What advice would you have? And what do you think that they would be shocked to know, the good, bad, and the ugly of being on the inside? So
Um,
two great
so
questions, really.
so many things. I think, um, I think. I mean, Reg would say this. Who was my teacher when I was a senior in high school. I had, I'll, I had no falsetto or no like actually real ability to access it or not. And the irony is, having just done Tootsie for a year, almost a year, I sang. I think it was a D above high C and a low A flat.
Hmm.
Could never have done that when I was 17 and 18. Never. I think the thing, and Reg always, drummed this into me. You're gonna get better as you get older if you stay just trying to, chasing the skill and chasing the music of figuring out how to do it because for me at least, I was not a natural born, just like everything pops out easily. Not at all. It was years of figuring out what is that? What is that? Am I pushing too much here? How do I, oh, am I over singing? Am I singing? Am I practicing too much? I have food allergies. I have, seasonal allergies. I have asthma. Like figuring out all of those things to figure out how to get better. And I think being told when I was younger that I have time and that
Hmm.
to give
Wow.
myself a break is super important. Um, you've got to give yourself time. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Mhm. That's really a lovely thing because I think at least I hear a lot with musical theater. I mean, with opera, you definitely need time. I mean, years and years post college. But with musical theater, there's this sense of you better be launching pretty quickly. And
Oh,
so,
not true. Not true. I will say, I'm here to tell you it's not true.
mhm.
Um, and if you want, again, if you want a, it's not even about wanting a career that's lasting. If you want a life in art, there's no reason to rush. And again, all the people that I mentioned earlier, the best people that we all think of when we think of whether it's in musical theater or an opera, none of them came out of the gates, at 17 and were like superstars and then had long, fulfilling career. They're not, you know what I mean? It's not the same. They're either, you show up at the time when people are ready to kind of receive you in some way and you've gained all of these skills and you're going to keep going and you already know that so you don't get seduced by the shiny stuff.
Mhm.
Or there are people who do like break out right away, but I don't know that I want to hear like humanity's greatest stories on someone who hasn't spent the time figuring out all the different things they can do with their instrument, both physically, emotionally, and vocally,
Mhm.
um, to tell the stories of our human race. It's a
Mhm.
big, like, I don't know. That's, yeah.
You
Does
have
that
to
answer
live.
what
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. And no, we're doing great. I think it's, and also what would you say specifically to NATS teachers about guiding their students with training? I love this, telling them to slow down, take your time. All of that is wonderful. Any specific advice about training that you might have? For instance, I have often heard make sure, that acting is really instrumental, even almost more than the singing. Um,
yeah. Well,
that's
but it depends. I would say it depends on what they want to do. I mean, Nats teachers, obviously, you've got kids that want to be able to both technically and emotionally get over songs, right? I mean, that is now in what work. I mean, I knew as an actor, I had a great acting teacher say, "What kind of stories do you want to tell?" And I have friends who have very different points of view on that. That they wanted to be in, they want to be on TV. And what they really mean is they want to tell stories for the camera, or they want to tell. A lot of them wanted to tell like contemporary stories that take place now. I knew I wanted to run the gamut. I didn't want to be limited. And if you don't
Mhm.
want to be limited, you've got a lot of things you've got to learn because there's a lot of things out there. So someone singing an Italian art song, the skills that are required for that are going to be different. They're going to help you than when you're singing a musical theater song or you're singing a more like rock edgy or a song. However, um, it depends on what you want to do. If there are singers on Broadway that have no interest in being able to sing in Sweeney Todd,
Mhm.
which I would then argue they also have no interest in being in an opera or an operetta.
Correct.
So they can get away with stuff that someone who does is not going to do because that sound isn't going to correlate with what they need. Um, I think identifying that is important. Also, bottom line, your body's going to tell you if you're doing something healthfully or not, and you got to listen to that. And that doesn't need to be a giant stop sign of like stop. It has to be it's a warning of like you pushed this too far or you haven't quite figured this out. And listening to that, and with a great teacher who is hopefully also providing samples of like of examples of great singing, so
Mhm.
that we have an idea of like what that actually sounds like, and help navigating a way forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think and that ultimately the teachers I remember, the teachers that I love, the teachers that I go back and still use the things they gave me were nothing but supportive and were able to show me something that was provable. Like if you do A, B, and C, this will happen. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Technique is knowing what to do. Um, and that will never leave you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also acknowledging that there are also a million variables.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complicated, being a professional voice user is it's complicated because all the medical stuff, not to, I mean, there's a lot of things you've got to, you know, you're going to be dealing with. Not
Yeah.
just the acting, not just the singing, your health, how much sleep have you gotten, um, you know, all of that stuff.
And I definitely want to get to the health. But let me ask this question. I'm so happy to have a question come in from Mary McCurdery, who says she's also a fellow IAC 99 summer alum here. So
Oh,
she
wow.
and she said, and I love this question, Mary, thank you. Santino, do you continue to cross-train vocally, singing all kinds of styles, or do you stick with one genre more than any other these days?
No, I still do. I still cross train. Not, I mean, depending on uh, the gig that is
Mhm.
before me. Uh, yes, I mean, I will say when we were working on the Tootsie stuff, and I went into Joan and I wanted to make sure, I was like, I just want to make sure everything is smooth. We did Italian stuff, we did Gilbert and Sullivan stuff, we did, and trying to mix it all up, and also all over um, that I do a lot with Ted Sterling, where I sing kind of, I wouldn't say full on baritone stuff, but it's definitely below the staff, and then also tenory stuff, and figuring, keeping all of that pliable and flexible. Um, and then there's also the reality of like whether it's cabaret material or concert material, you're either singing what somebody has provided you or um, musical theater rep or like jazz standard, American songbook stuff. That's definitely the majority. But you never know. You never know
How
what you're
far
asked to do.
towards more of the rock musicals do you go? I mean, do you stay more in?
I mean, I have more harmonic interests than most rock musicals provide, I would say. Uh, and I also know doing something once is fine. Doing something for a couple weeks is great. Doing something for a few months can be a challenge. Again, if you're going to do a Broadway show, you're doing it for potentially a year. So there hasn't been a lot. I mean, I don't. Um, I want to be able to play around with all the different types of sounds I can make, but it's not. It's not my. It doesn't speak to me the way that I have other friends. There's a guy I did Tootsie with who does a lot of rock stuff and has found an amazing, healthy way to do it. And that's kind of like where he lives. That's what he listened to when he was a kid. And that wasn't what I listened to when I was a kid, to be
Mhm.
honest.
That has to have influenced your career
Yeah,
trajectory a little bit. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
100%.
yeah. Well, there's a question coming in. So before I go down my next rabbit hole, let me take Amy Golden's question, who says, can you talk about how a young performer gives him or herself time when they have to pay bills and support their training? I work with high school students, she says, many of whom are applying to musical theater programs. Their parents are terrified of their kids going into the uncertain employment career.
Um, yeah, well, listen, if you can, this is a corny and trite thing, but it's true. If you can do anything else and be as happy, you should do it. I wouldn't wish, because it's not just the financial burden. It's not just the scarcity of work. It's not just the unstableness of the profession. It's what it does to you mentally and
Mhm.
physically to be continually rejected and continually putting yourself up. There's a study where they say an interview for a job is equivalent in your body to like going through a car crash. Actors do that 3 times a day. So if you can do something, oh sorry, if you can do something else and you feel like you will be as happy, absolutely you should do that. Absolutely. I mean, I took the LSATs. I was doing a play in San Diego that I thought I was terrible in and was not having a great time and thought, I don't think I can do this. And I took the LSATs online. But what kept calling was, no, I want to be singing and acting and singing. I want to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a choice because
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what, and it doesn't have to be as a performer. A life in the art, whether it's teaching or directing or
Right.
there are 8 million writing. I mean, so many great actors. Yeah, so many great writers were actors initially,
Mm-hmm.
and composers.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Pasek and Justin Paul, who wrote Dear Evan Hansen, and they wrote music for La La Land. They went to college with my wife. They were actors
Mm-hmm.
who were like, I don't know. I mean, I love this thing. I love music. I love story. But I've got this other thing. Maybe this is better for me, or maybe I want to do this more. But again, you have to listen to what your North Star is, which is what's giving you feedback of this is good. You need to keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I love
otherwise,
that.
life is too short.
Mm-hmm.
Life is too short.
Yeah. We
And
have
if
a
you have it, yeah, absolutely.
no. Go no. Keep going. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
I had a friend who was I saw just the other day who, uh, has a day job and is still a hugely accomplished and was, okay, I'm doing this because I have to make a little money because I don't want to do the play that I don't really want to do, or I don't want to do that TV show, or I don't want to do whatever I don't want to do. So I'm going to make money. Okay, I'll make money this way. I'll go teach students, or I'll go find something else. Public speaking, teaching to like corporations. I mean, there are 8 million ways to make some money while you're pursuing what you love, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not. There's nothing to be ashamed of. That's what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
for the vast majority.
Yeah. Love that. We have a great question from a dear colleague, Cynthia Vaughn, who, next time you go to Richland, Santino, on G Wash Way near
Yes.
Winco, she has a wonderful music studio called Magnolia Studios, and she's a good friend of Reg as well. She is saying, she said hello from Richland, and she says, speaking of taking your time, what are some roles that you look forward to aging into?
Oh, that's hard. Oh, um, I don't know. I think the challenge, and this is how it's different from opera. I mean, there is a similarity in that the musical theater repertoire, there are revivals are done definitely, and there are parts. The tricky thing, what I guess my hesitation is, being an actor is so much about having your heart broken, whether it's you want the job, you don't get the job. You get the job and it doesn't turn out to be what you had hoped. You get the job, it's great, and it ends. Uh, you get the job, and your job is to have your heart broken, on stage, to be vulnerable. Uh, and so I think back when I was younger, I did have like, oh, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. And then you realize me trying to control the universe of setting up the things I'm going to do is really just setting myself up for more heartbreak. I mean, there are things that I want to do a production of Sweeney Todd in some capacity. I don't know which part, and I don't know where or when. I want to do, um, I mean, there's so many. I want to be in Assassins. I want to do City of Angels. And yet I want to be in Henry V. I want to be in Richard III and Richard II.
Wow.
And I'd like to also be in a new musical that is of the size and stature of those shows, Sweeney Todd, for example, like something that is original, that is worthy of the New York Phil to do in concert.
Love it.
Um, yeah. An
Love it.
Adam Gettle thing. I'd love to do an Adam Gettle something.
Yeah. Yep.
Michael John LaCusa, stuff like that.
Love it. She says, great answer. She loved it. So that was good.
Great.
So, I live on vocal health and of course your teacher Joan as well. So I would love to know from you, an insider, are Broadway singers becoming better educated about vocal health? Your language, of course, is, I can tell, someone who has been
Yeah.
educated. Do you find that most people are becoming more educated and aware of the needs of a vocal health? And
Yes. Listen, it is definitely, there isn't a single actor on Broadway who has made their living as an actor on Broadway who isn't in some way in constant communication with their vocal health. And that, depending on their knowledge and their experience of their own instrument, it's just unavoidable. Just to be asked to do what we are asked to do 8 times a week, and it keeps getting harder. It doesn't get easier. People are raising keys. They're not lowering keys. They're increasing. I mean, in Tootsie, for example, I was gone for one scene in the second act. So it's not getting, and I was in a corset and high heels. It's not getting easier. So I think there is a big awareness of actors that know what this is, obsessively trying to figure out, how can I stay healthy? What do I need to learn? One of the things that people don't want to talk about, there are a lot of vocal injuries on Broadway. A lot. Probably more than in any other profession, singing profession, definitely. I think
that's what the stats show. Yeah.
there's just nothing like it. So, and that's a different, I mean, I will tell you again, this goes to the obsessive thing. When I was in college, because it was also liberal arts, and I took a vocal disorders class, scoping people and scoping myself obsessively, and learning about inflammation, learning about recovery, learning about, and then all the things that I've learned through Joan, all of those tips and tools and tricks, and also being able to advocate for myself of knowing, I'm going to go talk to my doctor because this isn't worth it, because preventing the snowball is the name of the game, physically and vocally on Broadway, 100%. And it should be for anybody, because the second you can have a little inflammation, you can have a little swelling, and you can know like things aren't as easy as they were, but you've got to be able to know how to correct that before your matinee tomorrow, because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
And that is, you have to have a real technical awareness, or you're gonna crash. And you can crash and get back up. Some of our best singers on Broadway had major surgery and major questions of, are they ever going to get their voice back? And they sing better now than they did before.
That's the silver lining if you have the right team in place.
Absolutely. It is achievable.
Yeah.
With the right amount of time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And does I'm sorry, Ayad, AJDA, I do not know how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry, Snyder. She says, but what about the use of mics on Broadway? Isn't that helping?
It depends. It can help. It can also, I mean, the difference, here's what I will say. And I've done musicals where there are no mics, and I did that opera, there are no mics for that. The difference of what you're asked to do, depending on the style, which often, especially now, is written for a mic, like it actually is. Like if I'm just trying to get vibration here, the mic will take care of the rest. And that's also 8 shows a week, hard enough to keep that consistent. So and there's a reason why, opera stars are not doing 8 shows a week for a year. There's a reason. So because they're using just on a scale that we're not being asked to do. So again, you want to be able to have the flexibility of doing both. I think, yes, I think mics do definitely help, especially with the speaking. That's where it really makes the biggest difference. Because if you are speaking, if you're doing a straight play without mics, which is usually what it is, I feel like usually I'm more tired vocally than in doing a musical. Because in doing a musical, if I'm really going to be able to sing the same thing, I'm going to have to be healthy. I mean, not that I'm not being healthy in the play, but you walk down the street and you hear people talking, they're not singing, you know, it sounds like human people, just normal people. But no, mics definitely do. I think they definitely help if you're using them.
And but you don't get, at what stage do you get the mics at a Broadway show? Or like a
Not
majority
until
of the
no,
rehearsal is
no.
without. So that
Yeah.
doesn't, yeah.
Which goes to what we're saying about you have to know your instrument. You have to know I can continue this stream of sound in an easy, healthy way in a rehearsal studio and not blow myself out, knowing that mics are coming and it's, you know. And also
Mhm.
then you've got the questions of the mixing and the orchestra and I mean there's so many uh, variables that you have no control over. All you have control over is how much sound are you putting out and how, you
Mhm.
know, and you have to hold on to that and only give what is healthy in that moment and trust that they're going to do the rest because otherwise you'll die. I mean, there's just no way.
Yeah. Liz Gray, who's a theater arts voice instructor at Interlochen, says, can you articulate the differences, if any, for you when acting classical text and acting in a musical, singing, dancing, scene work?
Say the first part of it again. The
Articulate the differences, if there are any, when you're acting classical text and
Sure.
acting in a musical.
Um, no, there isn't a difference. It's, I mean, it has to do with the, it has to do with the story, the content. You know, content is form. So if it's iambic pentameter and taking place and I'm playing a king, that's going to say a lot about how I'm going to be approaching the material versus if I'm doing a contemporary musical like Tootsie where I'm talking like people do today and singing in a musical idiom that sounds like David Yazbek, you know, like his music sounds. No, that kind of decides. But the approach is the same. It's the same. Who am I? What do I want? Who is around me? What's in my way? Uh, where am I? What is the arc of this scene? What is the beginning? What is the middle? What is the end? And yeah, that all that stuff is the same.
Yeah. And from Liz's student Miles, who met you a couple weeks ago post show, and she wants to know, what is your daily routine before a show? How early do you arrive at the theater? What vocal physical warm ups do you do? How do you get into the right mindset, especially in such a physical show where you are constantly moving on and off stage?
Um, well, this is a great thing. I mean, this is kind of something that Reg said when I was younger. It's only gotten easier over time because I've been able to identify more quickly how am I on any given day? How am I feeling? Am I dehydrated? Did I drink too much last night? Do I feel a little raspy? Did I eat something that I may be a little allergic to? Did I reflux? Did I overdo it last night? Do I feel great? And then figuring out the warm up is based off of that. And some days, literally, it's I'm good. I'm great. Everything's there. I'm fine. And then I did a concert with Christine Ebersol a couple years ago who has an amazing technique. And someone said, someone asked her, how do you warm up? She was like, what do you think the first song's for? Everybody is different. And now I think there are days that that has been me, but knowing what I know about how am I feeling, did I get enough sleep? Um, I will say I am someone who I'm a night owl, so I will sleep as much as possible. I will not wake up until my body says I'm ready to wake up, especially if I'm doing 8 shows a week. Although on a 2 show day, I found for this job, for Tootsie at least, which was vocally demanding, uh, in the sense that you had to have both ends. You couldn't just kind of get stuck. You know what I mean? Like I'm so jealous sometimes of baritones who I feel like, okay, you could wake up, God knows what, you'll be fine. That was not the case. For a 2 show day, I'd have to wake up by 10 for the 2 o'clock show just to get things going because otherwise I would be sunk. Well, granted, I did shows those days, and I don't think anyone would know. I knew it was just harder.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
didn't
it
feel
was just
like
harder.
this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say, and, it's the same stuff. You get alignment, physical alignment, make sure everything's in the right spot or moving towards it. Breath, making sure everything's open, and then sound, vibration, articulation, and then range, and just checking in. It's important that a warm up is a warm up and not a workout,
Mm-hmm.
especially on Broadway. The workout is the show, and you're
Right.
not done until the end of the week before the day off, in which you are hoping that full day off and the full next day up until the show is enough recovery time.
Mm-hmm.
Even hoping you're not going to get sick, which guess what? Doing anything 6 days a week, 8 shows a week, people's immune systems are going to go down. You're
Of
seeing a
course.
ton of people. You're shaking hands with strangers at night. Yeah, it's a lot. Drinking
Mm-hmm.
water, steaming, it's all the same stuff.
Um, what Larissa Frazier wants to know, what kind of food do you eat on a show day?
Well, this is something that's been great. When I was 18, 17, 18, uh, we thought I had reflux. Turns out I didn't have reflux. I was allergic to corn, soy, and peanuts, which, if you're eating in America, is hard to avoid. So I would complain of like, this just doesn't seem consistent, my vocally. Well, it's taken me years to realize, oh my God, that's made things so much easier. So, and I would urge anybody who feels like things are inconsistent, like, go get the test. I wish I'd done it 10 years before. And then you just start testing, like, oh my God, if I don't eat that, I feel fine. Makes a huge difference. It has for me.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I don't eat that, especially during Tootsie. I couldn't eat that much because I had a corset that went on after 10 minutes in the show. And you don't want a corset if you just at all. So I'd eat lightly and, nothing in particular, nothing. And I wouldn't avoid anything that
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't allergic to.
Yeah, of course. Well, as we come somewhat towards the top of the hour, I wanted to make sure to save a little bit of time to talk about specifically your role in Tootsie, which required you. I did not have the fortune of seeing the show. I wish I had, but you definitely lived in both chest and head registration. And you mentioned that in high school, that was one of the first things Reg started working with you on, is your head voice, falsetto, whatever we want to call it, mode two. So talk about that a little bit, about this training that you did for that, and how it
Sure.
was singing a role that required all of that.
Yeah, again, like I said, that was not where I had no falsetto. It was just air, nothing. And I mean, now I know when the chords are stretched that much, if there's any inflammation, i.e., allergies, it's not going to happen. So now I know that. Uh, I did go to Joan, my voice teacher, who I've sung all the other shows I've done. I've worked with her and said, listen, here's the deal. There's never been a show on Broadway where a man plays a woman or a woman plays a man, they've literally really tried to sound as much as possible like believably in that way. Let's see what we can get away with in a way that is healthy and repeatable. And I sang that audition song that I sang in the show in every key, and then we listened back to like what qualities sound the most like, oh, that sounds like a belting woman, or that sounds like, oh wait, oh, how do we do that? And there also are a couple examples on YouTube of men who kind of specialize in this, uh, that we were able to kind of steal from, and then it was just about keeping everything completely wide open and flexible, and never getting stuck in any one spot. And then it's about playing with, the different uh, vocal qualities, really. Um, I mean, I feel like in some ways it was a blessing because the Michael stuff was, he's like a bull in a china shop as a character and vocally. It was all kind of, I sing, like I said, like low A flats and and have it like that. A G would be his high note or an A flat. And then, but we wanted it to sound like a guy. And then the Dorothy stuff, which would go up to, at one point, I think a D above high C, all the different ways we can get in there. How, they used breath differently. She uses a lot more. And in a way, having to do what she had to do was a cool down constantly to the Michael stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's a great, there's a reason why in a cool down you go into falsetto for men or head voice, because that's, if anything is wrong, that's where it's going to show up. In the same way that's what we do when we scope. That's, you know what I mean? That is, it saved me. It's a great, and I feel like I've learned so much as a singer, and I still think of myself as an actor first in a huge way, but I just know things now that I didn't know because I was forced to do this really bizarre gig,
Yeah.
You just learn things that you never would have to know before. So.
And what was it like singing in a corset and heels? Did you enjoy
Well, my wife gives me crap for that. I would say when the first day I came in after the corset and the in a fitting, I came home and I was like, babe, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this with the corset. She was like, shut up. We sing corsets all the time. You're going to be fine. You know what? It was, the heels didn't bother me, but the corset was, you just have to know your body so much more so that you can improvise based on how you're feeling, knowing what you have to work with. There were days where it was definitely, especially on two-show days, and if I wasn't feeling great, if I had a little bit of a cold or something, I mean, that was work. Keeping everything going, that's work. I think it's a good thing that corsets have gone away. That's right.
Well, they've just been replaced with Spanx, so it's a little bit of a toss-up. There's some similarities there.
Oh. Yeah.
We won't go there. Do you miss playing Michael and Dorothy, or Michael? Oh gosh, now I've forgotten what was. So, is that right?
No, Michael and Dorothy. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean, I miss the people. We all text each other. We've been texting each other. I miss them. It's also rare to be in a show on Broadway where audiences burst into laughter like that. That is just very rare. And it was a great, 3 years of my life of development to going to town to. So there are things I miss about it. And yet I will tell you, I'm eating whatever I want. I'll eat things I'm allergic to and take a Benadryl. I don't care. That is great. Not having to check in every morning and every night.
Yeah. And a great 3 years of your life that resulted in a Tony. I mean, that's just astounding. Yeah, I just love it. And bringing the conversation full circle that your grandfather knew of that Tony Award.
He did. He got to see it. He passed away just after the Tonys, but it was pretty great that he got to see that.
I love that.
His name was Tony. So there you go.
I love that. Well, I cannot thank you for sharing this hour with us. And before we say goodbye, I'll just remind our attendees that the next NATS chat is February 16th, and it will be with Joan Melton. And we will be discussing breath management strategies. Oh my goodness, breath management strategies across genres, exploratory studies in the UK and Australia. Some pretty interesting research that we'll be discussing on that. So I look forward to that. But Santino, thank you for your time tonight. Such a privilege.
My pleasure. And thank you all the voice teachers, because we all need you. So thank you.
And go Bombers.
Yes, go Bombers. We'll see you in the Tri-Cities over the holidays, I'm sure.
I will. Thanks, Santino. Good night, everyone.
Good night.